Hey everyone, PC Culture Gaming Dad here, and I'm live here on Twitch today. And I got a couple of things we're doing. First, I'm going to give some content updates about the upcoming weeks and next month. My schedule is going to be changing a bit, so I want to let everyone know what exactly I'm going to be covering, what games I'm going to be playing and working on, as well as I'm going to be reacting finally to a video that I've been putting off just because I really needed enough time to be able to cover it. And that is here we have Asmongold's interview with Steven Sharif, the creative director for Ashes of Creation. So I'm excited to watch this. It's a pretty long one, you know. But before we get into that, starting next week, because of some shifts with, my daughter being in camp and whatnot, among other things, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm probably going to be streaming 5 days a week on average. Maybe some days, some weeks I might be doing six, although I like to take a day or two off. And it'll probably be two times. I'll be doing in the middle of the day after I'm spending some time with my son in the middle. So probably somewhere between, I'd say like around 12:30, which is what I have listed here on my Twitch right now. Probably for a couple hours, give or take. Sometimes I might go a little over. Sometimes I might do cut it short, go a little under. The types of games and well, actually, but before I say that, so also in the evening. The evening time is probably going to be around somewhere between 8 to 8:30. And in the evenings, I will probably be playing with friends if I'm playing with friends that day. Lately, I've been playing Burning Crusade Classic with my friends. We just got news recently that Shadowlands 9.1 content, Chains of Domination patch is coming out next week. So last night I logged into live and I did start a little bit of catch up I had with my Covenant campaign that I've been procrastinating for a long time, but going to get that done. Need that catch up because we're going to be able to get flying this patch. So you'll see me probably playing WoW on most nights, whether it's Burning Crusade or Shadowlands live. So when we get all four of us together, I'll probably be Burning Crusade. Otherwise, we'll be playing some Shadowlands, and sometimes I'll be playing it by myself. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing then. Because of that change, I had to think about what I want to play right now, and it's all subject to change. But generally speaking, I'm going to be spending definitely more time in World of Warcraft because of 9.1, at least for the foreseeable future. During the day, I will be playing other games though and doing other coverage, including new information on Ashes of Creation. Speaking of which, this Friday is going to be the June monthly stream. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend live, so it'll be something that likely next week, a week from today on Monday, I'll probably be streaming at around this time as well, and I'll be covering it then. So even if I miss it, I'll be sure that I will definitely cover it and get to you my thoughts and see what we got going on. I'm looking forward to this one actually because in July, as you may likely know, we're getting the Alpha 1 testing. Now, I'm not an Alpha 1 tester, but there's going to be lots of people who will be, so we're expecting it to be a very interesting month to see, where the game is at, and whatnot. So that's exciting. Otherwise, I will at least be weekly covering Grim Dawn Reign of Terror for the time being. It's a game that I still enjoy and play. Diablo 2 mod is really excellent, and the team really deserves a lot of praise for what they've done. All things considered, it's a mod. They don't have to do it. They do it because they want to. So I'll definitely be playing a little bit of that each week, at least one time. And as far as, I know not too long ago I'd started playing Black Desert Online and giving that a try. I'm not so sure that I'm going to be able to fit it into my schedule right now. If that changes, I will let you know. You'll see a stream with that game come up. The combat is engaging and it's fun and it's exciting. But that's really the main driving appeal for me for that game right now. So there's just other games I want to play, and I'm not sure that I can fit that in right now. Another game that I want to give a shot here is I want to go back to King Arthur: A Knight's Tale because they had a recent really big patch and they overhauled the game completely. You have to restart. I'm excited to give it a shot. It's something I backed on Kickstarter, and I've covered a couple of times, a few times on this channel, and both on my Twitch and on YouTube. And so I want to go back and give that game a try as well. It's one of my favorite styles of game, tactical strategy, and it has RPG elements as well. So I'm definitely excited about that because, again, 9.1 coming, I'm gonna have to spend more time in World of Warcraft, and with Diablo 2 Resurrected on the horizons as well. I hate to say it, it sounds silly to complain about, but I'm feeling a little pressed for time. I want to make sure that, because I know that there are games that I want to play, and I want to make sure that I'm able to get to and cover some of those other things as well. So I'm just trying to be realistic. Time is definitely a big factor in my life, between, you know, taking care of my kids, being a husband, cleaning the house, you know, playing games for leisure time, and taking care of my physical health. It's a lot. My plate is really full, despite it being summer and me being technically off for the summer as a community college instructor. So and once that starts up again in mid-August too, then my time's going to be even less. So I have to unfortunately be a little selective. And I mean, this is going to sound silly, but there are a lot of games to play right now. There really are. So, anyways, I don't want to bore you anymore. Without further ado, let's get into this video and see how it goes. We can see we have, gosh, almost 1 million views here on this video. So I imagine there's a lot of interest, and I think it's great to see Asmongold covering this, and I believe he is going to be playing the Alpha 1. So we'll get to see, hopefully sooner than later, what he thinks about the game and where it is. And look, this is July 19th of last year, so you're going to have almost a whole year of work on the game. So I'm thrilled. I'm excited. So let's get to it.
Dude, if this game comes out with everything that's been promised and it's polished, WoW's done.
All right, here we go, boys. Yeah, okay, man.
How's my sound quality, by the way? I'm on my phone driving to Vegas, and I'm like in the middle of the desert.
Surprisingly better than most streamers who make it a career to have their sound quality be pretty good.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I wanted to say thank you very much for coming on and talking to us about this. I think we all really appreciate it. I mean, like, I heard a little bit of your story about how you were kind of an MMO player who's been, as many of us, maybe felt a little bit neglected, and you thought about going your own way. And so this is something you've been working on. How long have you been working on the project for?
So, yeah, actually, I started my first MMORPG as a kid at 7 years old when it was like 1992, $6 by the hour to play on AOL. It was Neverwinter, the first Neverwinter.
Oh boy.
And
yeah.
Since then, I played pretty much every MMO out of the box. And, the story for Intrepid and Ashes of Creation.
Can I just say I love Steven's
really
energy all the time.
My
I really do.
MMO that I was playing pretty heavily, which was Arcade, about 6-7 years ago.
Arcade.
About 6 years ago. And I really loved that game. Like, I felt it had a lot of great potential, and I just got really fed up and upset with, some of the design decisions. And let me know if I'm cutting out, by the way.
But it'll probably be off and on. It'll be all right.
Yeah. Some of the design decisions really just kind of ticked me off. And, I had a very large guild in that game, and I've had a large guild since I was one of my favorite MMOs I played back in like 2003 for many years was Lineage 2. A lot of
he's mentioned Lineage 2 many times.
From like Lineage 2 Arcade.
He's mentioned it many times.
Brought that up, actually.
I thought Lineage 2 was a great game. I really like non-faction based games that leave kind of the player agency to determine your friends and foes to the player. So essentially, I was in San Diego, and San Diego's a great hotbed for developers. You know, we have a lot of studios around us. We had Sony Online Entertainment, which became Daybreak. We had, you know, Blizzard in Irvine. We had you know, Amazon Game Studio and stuff. So you know, I'm a pretty big tabletop gamer as well. I love playing like Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40K, and a lot of the guys from Sony would play at my game shop. And
really?
you know, I was
cool.
I was retired at like 29, and when I was fed up with ArcAge, and I said to these guys, I was like, hey, what do you think about making an MMORPG? Like, I'll fund it. Let's try to hire a bunch of people and see what we can do. So
retired at 29 must be nice, right? Hey, you know what though? Let's not hate on someone else's success, right? Good for him, and look, he wants to do something great with it.
The designs that I had for Ashes, you know, all the different systems that exist. And about 2017, we went to Kickstarter, not really as a means for funding. You know, I'm personally funding the entire project, but actually to, you know, add some additional features, but also mainly to get a litmus test on what the community thinks about many of our designs.
To see if there's a demand.
Exactly, yeah. It's essentially to test this design
Makes sense.
because, as you know, and a lot of MMO players know, you know, there's been this kind of a paradigm shift towards a mentality of everybody's a winner, and there's no longer a risk versus reward type of design philosophy. And
yes, we've heard of that.
And that's, I can't stand that. I mean, it makes me, it really undermines what the genre was meant to be. And that doesn't go to say that there shouldn't be systems that are made for casual players and systems that are made for hardcore players. You should have a diversity of progression paths. But, you know, I really got upset with that. So we wanted to make sure that these ideas resonated with the MMORPG genre. And that's, you know, what we did with Kickstarter was very successful. And that's when we started to really ramp up in the number of developers and the size of the studio, and really started making significant progress in production. So we've been in production now for about 3 years, ever since Kickstarter. And, you know, we have over 65 developers that are here in San Diego, with some that are, you know, outside elsewhere.
I'm from San Diego.
In the world.
That's where I was born.
We're ramping up right now. We just launched another hiring phase with 24 positions available at the studio that we're promoting.
So whenever you're talking about the Kickstarter and the kind of feedback that you guys have gotten, is there any specific feature in the game that was actually kind of thought of by people in the Kickstarter, or are these just kind of all ideas that you've come up with and just different people have enabled them to happen?
Yeah, there really wasn't ideas that we took, so to speak, from a system or mechanic standpoint from Kickstarter. All of these designs are, you know, essentially...
FYI, $3.2 million. That, remember, they didn't even need. They literally didn't even need. Because Steven has been very successful in life, and as he said many times, he's funding it completely.
Designs that I created as kind of inspiration from the many MMORPGs that I played in the past, each of which, you know, contains some, you know, reference to maybe a system that is in Ashes that I thought did well. And I just thought, why not combine all of these systems together into a game that represents a wide array of player ability to kind of focus in the direction and progress in a direction that they want.
Like Blizzard on crack, dude.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's something that we're obviously, we still,
you know, providing a truly PvX kind of experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I was really kind of excited to see, and this is something that I really liked about Classic WoW, for example, is that you had people who basically their end game was doing professions, and with BDO you had kind of the same thing, where you had players that were PvPers and PvEers, and then you also had people that were working inside of the community of the game, kind of carving out their own gameplay experience. And I feel like professions are playing a very big role in Ashes of Creation. Am I kind of right about that? I've seen a lot of stuff about it.
Yeah, so the profession system is intrinsically tied to what is called our artisanship system. So the artisanship system really contains 3 branches of focus. Okay, gathering, processing, and crafting, essentially. The gathering is focused really around the blacksmithing profession, your ability to craft tools that essentially better your ability to collect raw resources in the world to harvest them. They grant you access to higher grade resources. They increase the chances of procking rare materials out of, rare resources out of the harvesting nodes. And then the
I'm going
processing
to
is
turn the
based
volume
kind of
down
around your
just a
freehold
bit
system, with
on the
essentially
desktop.
establishing the infrastructure for processing those things on your freehold parcel. And
By
that's
the way, if you guys watch my videos, please leave me feedback on things you see, like if is the volume too high, too low, or it's my speed, if you can hear me well, like these things, that would be helpful. Thank you.
like building blueprints of smelters or of stables for the animal husbandry profession, that kind of thing.
It's kind of like
And then once you
middle
process,
professions.
right, exactly. And
Yeah.
once you process those raw gatherables into craftable materials, that's when the crafters come online. And their main focus is to acquire recipes. There are limited uses to recipes, the more rare the recipe is. And that's tied intrinsically into node progression. So as nodes get higher stages, it unlocks crafting stations that can be constructed so that the crafters who get their processed goods from the processors, who get their raw materials from the gatherers, are able to complete a finished product.
So there's it's an assembly line effectively.
Right, exactly. The key to making a successful crafting system is including interdependencies that exist within the system that people are required to excel and progress in order to facilitate that assembly line.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's one of the best things about the game. It's one of the things.
So I
that
never
makes
played
the system
classic
so
WoW
is
back in the day.
fact
Endgame
that
is
people can kind of do
professions.
everything all by themselves.
Wow.
But how many professions?
Nothing like the WoW.
You can only be an artisan in one profession at a time. Is that right?
So, as you progress in one of the three branches of the artisanship system with your gathering, processing, or crafting abilities, it unlocks access to certain professions that then you have a secondary progression path in based off of your performance in creating that profession's specialty. So think of it like a tree. The higher you go up the tree, the taller the branches that you have access to. Those branches are essentially the professions.
Okay, that makes sense. And so I did see one element of it that I was a little bit. I'm actually curious about how you're going to be able to balance this, and that the profession gear is going to be equivalent to the raiding gear.
Right. So essentially, the crafted gear is going to be on par with what legendary drops will be. And the way you kind of accomplish that is, the drop tables that exist for world bosses or dungeon bosses, they have a RNG chance of dropping completed items.
Yeah.
Complete, totally finished items. However, they have a higher chance of dropping material components that are necessary and unique recipes that are necessary in crafting those on par gear. So
I
the
see.
idea,
Okay.
yeah. So the idea is, as you're completing this content, you're not only fueling the opportunity through the drop table system to acquire completed boss gear, but you're also adding additional materials that go into supplying the master artisans with the ability to craft this gear as well.
Did you ever play Classic WoW?
Yeah, I played Classic WoW.
Onyxia Scale Cloak? Is that it?
I really honestly didn't get into WoW too much.
Okay.
And the reason why is because WoW launched around the same time as Lineage 2. And,
Steven
I really
loves his
wasn't
Lineage.
a huge fan of the faction-based system. Oftentimes I found myself disliking my own faction more than I disliked the enemy faction I was told to fight.
Yeah, I can relate.
I kind of, felt in Lineage there
This
was an
is
opportunity
Lineage
there to
2.
have more guild-driven politics, more player-driven interactions, and I kind of got hooked on Lineage in that regard, so I didn't play WoW a lot.
No, I can understand that. I think that the same dynamic happened in Black Desert, and I can totally understand it. It was really fun in there too. So, like for example, with the profession gear, let's say you kill a dragon, and the dragon can drop a dragon tooth, but you can also get dragon scales from the dragon, and you use the dragon scales to craft like a shield or something.
Absolutely correct. So there's going to be multiple material components that are capable of being dropped from each world boss and or dungeon boss, and those components will relate to a specific type of craftable gear.
Okay, and that's where the high-level craftable gear comes from. And these.
So, I played Warcraft 2, and I had so much fun with that game. I really did. And Warcraft 3 was just even better, right? So for me, I'm a little biased. I enjoy that Warcraft universe, yet I didn't play World of Warcraft until Legion, right? But like, he doesn't like the factions. I can kind of get that, I'm curious. I've never. Well, I played Lord of the Rings Online, and that didn't have factions, so just had races and whatnot. So I guess I've played that. That was my first MMO. So I guess I've seen both sides of it. Just depends. If you like what you're playing and you want to feel like you belong to something, then I guess the factions kind of help serve that purpose, you know. But otherwise, you know, I can see the appeal to both, right?
High level bosses and these.
But I don't think factions are necessary.
These
They're
are
not
all
necessary.
in instant content. The highest level.
So
ones?
not all of them. There are some that are more story related that get instants.
Gosh, I
But
need to mute
80%
this
of
chat.
the
These guys are
content that
messaging me
will
way too
exist in
much.
Ashes of Creation is
Mute.
open world, and there's a specific reason for that. So
Mute.
because of
8
the way
hours
that
there.
friendships and/or enemies are forged in the game, and people have the opportunity to create or their own friends or foes, we want that to play out from a contesting standpoint as well. So a lot of these hunting grounds or raid bosses that people are going to have opportunities to kill, they're going to be essentially contested potentially by your enemies that you've created in the game, or you can work together to create alliances in order to defend those contested zones.
Oh yeah, we have that now in Classic WoW. It's very very drama driven, but it's also very social. It is extremely social, and that's a big positive.
Absolutely. I mean, the social component of
So
what
remember, class.
MMORPGs
This is last
are,
year.
are supposed to be have kind of been lost over the years, in my opinion, over the past decade, as many of the designs are more related to essentially creating these safe spaces for players, which don't create a lot of soft friction. And I don't like the idea of that. I think soft friction is an important component of making people emotionally invested in the outcome of events in games. That's an important part of why we play games. And some of the best experiences that I've had as an MMORPG gamer have been not related around the curated content by the designers, but instead by the unpredictable player-driven encounters that nobody could have predicted. Like I remember,
Steven likes more realism in his games.
My guild was fighting almost the entire server, and we had literally, and I'm not exaggerating here, we had a 24 straight hour fight where I went to bed in the middle of the fight for like 3 hours, and I got back up and got back into the command chair.
That's insane.
All over the crap
That's crazy.
boss that the server was trying to prevent us from doing. And that, I mean,
I
those
could never
types
do
of
that
events
unless
live with you. I mean, yes, they're
unless I was like Asmongold or something where I had a huge following.
So I guess
Gotta pay the bills.
That experience is what caused you to have the sieges be at dedicated times during the day.
Yeah, so I think it's important that, for players, we work hard so that we can have the free time to come and enjoy, what we like with MMORPGs.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because you get like a heads up notice.
Yeah. Castle Siege at 2 a.m. in the morning, and
you're
up and your friends are up, and that's a really shitty experience. So
I agree.
The way we're going to structure the server shards is essentially when you come into the game, you're going to have a time zone that's appropriate next to your server that you choose. And that's going to reflect essentially the windows in which some of these key systems can operate. So, like, say, for example, you wanted to...
They got to balance it somehow.
Node, you'll complete that quest to get the siege scroll. When you get that siege scroll, the applicable time that you can declare the siege between, 3 p.m.
Kanan Nobus, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it.
Time if you're an Eastern server.
Right, yeah. Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's probably the smartest and best way to do it for the same reasons that you mentioned, too. So whenever you're talking about, like, this PvE content, like, what's kind of the difficulty level of that content, and how will... Is the game...
I'm more of a PvEer, so this is interesting to me.
There's a heavy emphasis on, like, content that's very challenging and very hard. Is that something that you're really looking to emulate in Ashes of Creation, or is it just going to be mainly a social experience with difficulty that's kind of created primarily through the friction of other players?
Well,
you're a gaming dad too. Welcome.
100%.
Welcome.
Our
awesome.
objective on the PvE front is to create...
How long have you been gaming for?
That have varying degrees of difficulty that are determined by your performance as a...
Not necessarily as a dad, just in general.
As you're progressing through, let's say...
Like how old were you, I guess? You don't have to tell me the number of years. I can tell you mine. It's over 30.
Before you get to the final boss, your performance at those stages will dictate the AI's performance against you at each subsequent phase. That's kind of the idea behind the varying difficulty.
Since I was 5. Same as me. Hey, same as me. I was 5 as well with the Nintendo. Awesome. Awesome. What a small world.
And the varying degrees of difficulty will also influence the drop
Welcome.
tables that are used when you complete that content as well. So the better you do, the better opportunity you'll have from a gear and drop standpoint.
There's got to be more of us out there. There's got to be more casual gamers, you know, dads, moms, whatever. There's got to be more of us.
That I've experienced as a gamer in MMORPGs is that gear chase.
Ooh.
And the reason people have a
Ninja Turtles, that game was
performance,
pretty damn hard for the NES. Holy smokes, that game was tough. I did finish it, but like if you lost a turtle, it was really tough to get him back.
Complete content at a degree in which you have to get the
Mine was Mario Brothers, by the way.
Right, so we want to make sure that there is difficulty that's reflective of the desire to get best in slot items, and that's a very important component.
So, like, for example,
people do like a challenge.
And if you kill the first
they want it to be too easy.
Seconds, then the second boss gains more health and it drops better gear. And if you kill the second boss within 30 seconds, then the third boss is even stronger.
The scaling difficulty, yeah, they've talked about this before.
That's a very simplistic way to look at it. I would say.
Yep, definitely a classic, right?
Accurate to a principle standpoint, but really
Save the princess Polaroid of saving the princess. Fortunately, I don't have it anymore. I would have that back there on my wall in a picture frame, I'm sure, if I did.
Thresholds on their health pool that instigate either rage mechanics or different types of environmental hazards and strategies that become.
I blame my parents. They misplaced it.
Things are kind of predicated in
they didn't know how valuable it would be to me sometimes. It would be so valuable if I had that. Honestly, it really would be priceless item.
Now the second boss is AI.
So this is very cool. I'm going to stop you for a second. I actually really like this idea. I wonder how they're going to have to definitely fine tune it a bit. But, you know, so if you just blitz through a boss, like yesterday I was doing LFR in Shadowlands, and I haven't in 4 months. And, you know, I mean, I seem to have remembered most of the boss fights and stuff. And I remember, though, doing what I did, like Denathrius from that first raid 4 months ago. Man, it was like tough. We would die, wipe multiple times. This time we just blitzed through them first try, and same thing on the other part of that ring. So I wonder how they decide. How does it work with the scaling? Are they going to be just not just like health and damage, but like mechanics, maybe kind of like how they have in WoW? They have, you know, LFR, normal, heroic, and mythic, and they have different mechanics. So I wonder. I'm very curious. I like the idea. I think it's very cool, so that you don't have to like pick a difficulty when you're entering a dungeon. Instead, it's going to be based off of how well you perform. But that also means that the first boss would never be difficult. Well, I mean, I guess that's okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. Well, I don't know. Like, they're going to need some more feedback for that.
On the scale, or number 5. You know, it kind of increases.
So it's
because that means that like the first boss would never be the hard. It would always be like the last boss. But I guess that's okay because the first boss shouldn't be the hardest. But do you guys kind of understand what I'm saying? Like I feel like you're at a disadvantage there, because then if you want more of a challenge, then the first boss is always going to be the one that just everyone blitzes through if they're really strong in OP. So that's kind of my minor reservation about it, but overall it sounds good. I like it.
Make difficulty in that way.
Exactly.
Okay, and does it also scale with the amount of players? So, like, for example, if you go in there with, I think
Jay Hibble, is that how you pronounce your name? Thanks for the follow. Appreciate it.
Are you encountering the same bosses at 8 players as you are with 40, or are there certain bits of content?
Okay, listen to this. Yeah.
That are exclusive, basically, for large groups like 40 and above.
So we're not going to be incorporating scaling into the encounter.
Jay Hibley. Jay Hibley. Okay. Got it. Jay Hibley.
40-man groups. You're going to have designated content.
Thank you for the follow, by the way. Welcome.
Monsters, and then you're going to have designated solo encounters, right? The idea there, you know, I'm not a huge fan of scaling. I think that kind of diminishes. I think it diminishes your achievements, and if you're always fighting the same difficulty level, it's a monotonous experience, and it kind of sucks. So. You know, that's why we have statically designated types of content.
And so that actually leads me to another question.
Static content.
So whenever you're leveling out in the world, the time frame that they gave and that Lazy Peon gave was 45 days, playing 4 to 6 hours a day. Is that accurate, or where would you kind of expect it to lie?
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to, you know, to have answered that in the past because I don't want to give people the wrong impression, but I would say this safely. A lot of games are built around very fast progression. And, you know, our
The WoW Classic ain't one of them.
many different progression paths.
How long it's taking me in
One of the
BCC
things
with a
is
group.
adventuring class
Yeah.
and leveling your adventuring class.
Granted, we're all relatively
Advancement of
casual though,
societies
but
of nodes.
still.
There's the advancement of the nodes itself. There's the advancement of your artisanship classes and gatherables. There's advancement within the religion system. There's advancement that is in exploration. There's a lot of different things that players can do to progress. So it kind of
42-year-old gaming dad. Hey, I'm 38. Welcome, welcome. See, I knew there was. I want to create this community of just parents, not just dads, but just parents that game. It's great. Welcome. Awesome. More the merrier.
Your
Got me.
your character
Yeah.
is meaningful, and not everybody is going to get a participation reward.
Well, that's
well. If you ask me in 30 years, I'm going to be a 68-year-old gaming dad. So
you're going from like there are zones that are, for instance, level 20 zones that if you go to
Game
level
of life.
30, those mobs are still level 20, and if you go there at level 10, the mobs are still also level 20.
So actually, there's a unique component. You know, the biggest thing that sets Ashes of Creation apart from pretty much every MMO that's come before it is that as nodes, you know, nodes are the primary world-building mechanic in the game. You go throughout the world.
Right.
Dang, look at that dragon.
Things, you kill monsters,
Sweet.
you quest lines, you gather goods, whatever. As you're doing that, you're collecting.
Always love a dragon.
And a node somewhere is collecting that experience as well. And as the node advances in
so as the node advances,
at each stage, it's actually changing the spawn tables around. So you have dedicated points of interest that exist around each of the node locations. And as the node advances, it advances.
Some people rip wow, wow killer, rip wow. Calm down, people. There's room for multiple games to exist. It doesn't have to be just one.
Biggest problems that MMOs
don't hate on people who play other games.
Partially one of the reasons why I wanted this system in place is because you always have these starting areas that were empty, worthless,
Dang, that's
no
a sweet looking
after
dragon.
An initial launch, right, or a new expansion launch. And that's kind of one of the intrinsic problems with MMOs. It appears to be like from a new player acquisition point, MMOs don't typically fare well. From a retention standpoint, they tend to fare better than most.
We kind of in alpha, I'm very excited to see more of it.
Unlocking new content that maintains
that's great to
the
hear.
relevancy of those zones, so that new players come back. And the reason why it's important, not new players, level players come back. And the reason why that's important is because one of the problems of a new player joining an existing MMO is there's no social experience because of those empty
yes.
Nobody's there to exactly.
Yeah.
So
because WoW became all about endgame.
If the primary source of new content is the node system, then you're always going to have these nodes that exist near the starting areas for players to kind of get introduced into societies, religions, and guilds and whatnot, and still have the relevant monsters and quest lines for them to progress. But there's going to be, higher level endgame characters that are present at the node as well for them to get inducted into, guilds or whatever.
So, like, for example.
So I like that. So I think what he's getting at is, so whereas like in, World of Warcraft, you're not going to see that many people in the starting zones, months into a new expansion or upon a game release. You're going to see less and less of those people. Whereas in this game, you have the node system that expands and branches out. And so there's going to be higher level characters in those same areas because they're going to be surrounding where the nodes are. And as a result of that, you're not going to feel like left out or just, man, there's no one around here. When you're playing a massively multiplayer online game, it feels good when you see, even if you're playing solo, it feels good when there's people around you, right? It's part of the experience. It's a big part of it, Not everybody likes that, but then if you don't, then you're probably not playing the right kind of game. Generally speaking, that's what you want. So I think that's very interesting that's the manner in which they believe they can solve this problem for new players that come in. And I like that. I really do. Like we're playing BCC Classic right now. Burning Crusade Classic, and compared to the first days, right? There's less people as we're leveling, and I imagine when I go through the Dark Portal eventually, some point, when we get there, that it's not going to be overloaded like it was when it first, when BCC dropped and everyone was already max level. Well, most people, right?
I don't know like how close this is, but I'll give you like a scenario and just let me know if this is, if I'm hot or cold here. So like imagine there's like a mountain, and then if you're mining in the mountain, eventually you start finding, small little like fire salamanders, and then you advance your node a little bit farther, and now you're seeing medium-sized drakes, and then you advance your node even further, and then there's an actual dragon inside of the node. Is that pretty much how it works?
It's not only that, but it's a little bit better as well, because
that's really cool.
we spawn nodes in real time as those assets come online. Sorry about that. I was getting a call. As the nodes come online, points of interest start to manifest as well. So you might be mining at that node, fighting a little fire salamander, and that fire salamander might stay there when the node progresses. But next to the mine you were mining, a dungeon has now appeared. Basically, the entrance has opened up because some archaeologists are attracted to the stage 3 node, right? And now that dungeon has relevant content for higher level people. So
very cool.
And the content that you're experiencing with the little fire salamander might
look at Asmongold's face. He's like perplexed, like what? What is this? Like creativity?
To that stuff. Yes.
Ashes of Creation.
Really good. And there's one thing that you said too that did kind of spark my interest. There are religions in this game. Is that right?
That's correct. There are 6 primary religions, as well as an underwhelm religion that players can progress in. And religions, societies like the Scholars Academy, Thieves Guild, they all have progression in rank and title. So as players, essentially, players have to choose which religion they're going to be a part of. They have to choose which society they're going to be a part of. They choose which guild they're going to be part of. As you choose those things, there is progression within those societies that are quest-based as well as objective-based. So essentially, like, the Thieves Guild may want a specific book from the Scholars Academy.
Can I just say, by the way, how cool this is that there's something as epic as a dragon for relatively, it says 10 plus, relatively low level characters, right? So that's cool. You should be able to, you shouldn't have to hit level cap to experience epic content, is really what I'm saying.
Academy, and your node,
I mean, dragons are epic as
hell. The Thieves Guild, so that's the only society it has available to it. You're a member of that Thieves Guild. You receive an objective that many players receive as well, to steal the book from a nearby node from their Scholar Academy building. Scholar Academy buildings are going to be flagged to kind of encounter and see you, and they can try to stop you. But if you're successful, you get experience, and you also get notoriety within the organization that grants you access to special shops, titles, and abilities that come online during either node sieges or different types of events.
So are these different religions, I'm sure there's a real life parallel to this as well, but are these different religions and guilds, not necessarily like guilds, but like different organizations?
Dragon just like disappeared.
Like that. Are these going to be put at odds with each other through mechanics in the game?
That gaming perspective, beating like a dead horse, absolutely.
Or is it just kind of something that plays out narratively?
So the guilds will have the opportunity to be at odds with one another through the guild war system, but they'll also have the ability to be friends with each other through the alliance system. The societies, which are more NPC driven, those will be predicated on the relationship your node has with surrounding nodes. So part of the mayoral duties is to maintain diplomatic relations with nearby nodes.
Look at that buggy right there.
You can only ever be a citizen of one node, and that flags the citizens as either being at odds with the citizens of a nearby node, depending on that diplomacy, or allies of the nearby node citizenship. So you could either be flagged for battle for a period of time. If there's a
yes, I did, Ghibli. I did. The ones outside, like the ice, the fire, the nature one, right? So that's cool, right? Because that makes sense. You should be able to. Sorry, you should be able to. My point is, a dragon is epic, even if it's a smaller dragon, right? So that's a great way to do it, because otherwise it's just like, wait, why am I getting to experience this freaking giant-sized dragon for level 10? Well, there should be scales of that. So, but yes, I did. Those fights were awesome, honestly.
Of other organizations, or you'll have
dragons, man.
Quest lines.
Who doesn't love dragons?
The book that I described.
Playing fantasy dragon.
That makes a lot of sense. And so basically, all of the
awesome.
All of the kind of forced hostility, like where you see another player and they're hostile to you and you can attack them, all of that is opt-in. Like you opt in to make the decision, like who you're hostile with.
That's correct. So there's no forced hostility. So essentially, the opt-in can be delegated either to leaders or to the individual. Essentially, let's say you're a part of a node as a citizen, and the mayor decides that they want to go to war. I don't know how this happened, but my seat cushion heater got turned on. I was wondering why I was like firing up.
Oh, shit.
He was getting fired up because he's like, he's getting all passionate.
It's the wrong time if you're in Las Vegas.
No, to answer your
That's
question,
hilarious.
it's an opt-in system. Sometimes that opt-in is delegated to leaders like the mayor or your
Look at all
mayor,
those flying
but
mounts,
essentially you
those
will always
cheaters.
have
They
the
shouldn't all
option
have that.
to leave either that organization if you don't agree with the leadership, or to vote them out through the election system of the mayorship systems.
Yeah, that's something that, as a streamer, I'm worried if they're gonna vote for me or to vote me out. I'm certainly
Well,
curious
the,
about
the
that.
the cool thing about the node system and its government stuff
Yeah.
is that there's four types of nodes essentially. There is the democratic type, which is called our scientific node type. That's where the election method is by voting. There's the military type, where players receive a champion upon becoming a citizen, and they can level that champion up through doing quest lines, and they can grant the champion gear, and then they participate in gladiatorial arenas to see who the victor is, and that victor becomes the mayor. The divine
That's so
node types
cool.
have
Seriously,
a
I love the idea of
quest-based
the mayor.
merit system, where the more questing you do for the temple of the node, the more likely you are to become mayor at the end of the election cycle. And then the economic system is more an oligarchy kind, where you contribute resources and
Oligarchy.
to essentially bid for the highest bidder to become the mayor. So not always is it going to be through popularity contest. That's really just delegated to the scientific system.
I think that's a really good feature, because you're going to have some people that can just, like if you have, like, let's say one guild that's completely dominant on the server, you're going to know that these people are always going to be in charge. But if there's different paths to progression, that kind of makes it at least a lot harder.
Yeah, that would definitely be worrisome if you just have one.
And not only is it
everyone join this guild, everyone join this guild, everyone join this guild, and you have like overall majority joining the guild. That's a problem.
Guild-driven dynamics, that having a very powerful guild on the server is really almost always temporary. And either there's infighting that occurs, there are internal politics between the alliances, or some other guild rises to fight. And I think that's kind of, it replicates that dynamic of good versus evil type struggle, where people become invested. Now, obviously, if the mechanics and systems of a game are built in such a way that they do not provide some rails to how far a dominant guild can go to ruin the experience for others, then it's a bad design theory. But if the designs are maintained in such a way, such as in Ashes of Creation, where there is success that's demonstrably recognized through the advancement of that particular guild, but you can't go as far as to ruin the game for other players, so to speak. You can definitely manifest your
Love the volcanoes. I always say it. Love the volcanoes.
Progression for other players. That's an important.
The world has life.
World type,
and that leads into the whole corruption mechanic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the way that works, my understanding is that it's kind of like the more that you basically
such a sweet looking mount, by the way,
the more hostile you become towards the not only other players in general, but also towards the NPCs as well.
I'm gonna be a bounty hunter. By the way, I'm not a PvPer. I'm gonna be a bounty hunter though. People who are going around PKing others, that's the kind of PvP I can get behind.
A lot of inspiration for
bounty hunting.
Flagging mechanics from Lineage 2.
Let's do it.
Lineage 2 did a great job in balancing both allowing the agency for players to.
I'm gonna get the casual gaming dad community together. We're gonna all be bounty hunters.
Anger or whatever, as long as there's a.
Let's find those PKs.
The mechanic is really designed in a way. Like, if you see somebody out there and you just hate this person and they've done something to you that's wrong, or they betrayed your guild and dropped with some boss loot or
Those
whatever.
Are beautiful trees. Look at those trees. Beautiful.
That happens in MMOs that
they look like cherry blossom trees.
And you
beautiful.
Want to kill that person? You have the.
Oh, we lost you, Steven. We lost you. What happened? ¿Qué pasó? He's like.
He's still in call.
He probably just hit a mountain or something.
Driving, so,
as long as you understand that it's a kite set, because there is normal. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you just cut out for a couple of seconds.
Oh, sorry about
that. I was
that.
just letting him know.
Sorry about that. So, yeah, the corruption system. So basically the way it works is there's a standard death penalty, and that death penalty allows you to, upon death, acquire a debt experience, and that debt experience can impact your normal gameplay. By either diminishing some of the power of your skills if you accrue too much.
Ooh, diminishing power of skills. Man, that's rough. But I like it.
If you fight back. So if you're rolling up on a person and they're not flagged and you're not flagged, you can attack them. You will become a combatant. They will still be a non-combatant. If they fight back, and they die as a combatant, you lose half of the normal death penalties you would normally lose. So we're incentivizing consensual PvP. If the player were to kill you
Interesting.
and you did not flag back, you didn't fight back, and you were still a non-combatant, they're going to gain a corruption score, and that corruption score multiplies their normal death penalties by 4 times. It also it also adds the opportunity for them to drop completed gear upon death, and it flags them for the bounty hunter system. So bounty
from
hunters,
their character, they drop gear from their character.
that's correct.
Wow.
Yes. So
Okay.
they can drop equipped gear if they're corrupt. Now that's a conscious decision that the
Wow.
player to become corrupt, though. So it's a, again, you have to
Hey, all the more reason to be a bounty hunter, right? To the victor, the
The
spoils.
idea is that if you gain too much corruption, meaning you try to turn into either a PK character or something along those lines, you're going to be eventually at some point you're going to be combat ineffective. Not only are you going to potentially lose your gear significantly more, but you'll also have less impact from combat skill percentage standpoint. And then
Dang, man.
there's 2 ways that you can essentially
It's very
lose that
detailed.
corruption.
Yeah, I was
When
wondering
you
about
die, when you die, you lose a significant portion of the corruption. If you go and you hunt and you gain experience,
But if you the question, if you die from anything or from being killed by other players?
that starts to diminish.
I think they've addressed this,
well.
right?
So at that point,
I'm
it
trying to
becomes
remember
like
from
a
the
cat and
streams.
mouse game because you're present on the map for bounty hunters, and because there's limited fast travel in the game, kind of really just determined by Metropolises, they're going to have to travel out to you, and you're not going to be very easily able to scroll back to town, so to speak, as you would in other games. So that cat and mouse relationship provides benefits to the bounty hunter if they successfully kill corrupt players, but it also allows the corrupt player to fight back against the bounty hunter, and the bounty hunter is always flagged against the corrupt player. So the corrupt player can fight back and kill the bounty hunter without additional detriment.
So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
yeah, it's a cat and mouse game. Okay, well that's pretty interesting. Is there?
I'm
so
gonna be the
do you have
cat,
to do a lot of
you shall be the
PK to start
mouse.
actually losing this kind of this stuff, right? Like your combat
Right.
effectiveness and all.
Yeah, not only do you have to do a lot of PKs that are consecutive, but if you have a number of PKs on your record without going through, we haven't really described this to the community yet, but there is a method by which you can lower your previous PK count so that it doesn't exacerbate the next amount of corruption you gain from the system. But corruption, you also gain more if you have a lot of previous PKs as well, so it's a cumulative
It's like
effect.
a karma system almost.
Right.
Okay, and so you do have like guild sieges and all that kind of stuff, and all of that is completely outside of the corruption system because it's consensual.
Right. The corruption system only applies to open.
All right, look at that ugly ass monster right
that
there.
are contained within opt-in systems such as
Like, cool looking,
sieges,
you know,
node sieges,
but ugly.
caravan fights, guild wars, and node wars. Those are all self-contained within specific systems that don't utilize the flagging system and do not utilize the corruption system. Those are where you automatically become.
They better make sure they get that working properly though, because that could piss a lot of players off if it's buggy or whatever.
Defense or the attacking side.
And so, going over to like the way the housing works, the freeholds effectively are just player housing out in the open world. Is that right?
Right. So
Okay.
there's 3 types. Yeah, there's 3 types of housing. There's in-node static housing, which are open world housings that are, they come online with each advancement of the node. There's apartment systems, which are instance housing that essentially, you must own a house within a node zone of influence or within a node before you can become a citizen of the node. So those instance apartments kind of grant the ability for players to become citizens of those nodes. There's some that start, but then also mayors get to elect construction sites, which are public work projects that the citizens can participate in. They can grant, resources to those buildings, and he can construct additional apartment buildings. He can construct advanced crafting stations. He can construct diplomatic buildings, marketplaces, auction houses. It all depends. But then the player housing, the third type, is the freehold system. And the freehold system is 1 per account. It grants you a large parcel of land, which you must then collect blueprints for, and then collect resources to build those buildings. And that's really kind of the processing plant of each player. They'll be able to take raw resources that they either purchase from other people or that they acquire themselves, and they'll be able to process them into material goods that can be then used for crafting.
Is there going to be
And
something
Steven
like
definitely has
effectively
a
guild
vision, a
freehold
strong
that's
vision.
larger, like a castle?
Because
Correct.
he's so passionate. He
guilds
knows
advance in
exactly
level,
what he has in mind.
and the way guilds advance in level is through specific quest lines that are attributed to the guild members that they must participate in, and/or achievements that the guild can achieve. When they advance in level, the guild has the opportunity to allocate guild skill points in their skill tree to either allowing them to include additional membership
No, look at that
or
naked
to
guy. What is he doing?
focusing passive abilities that the guild members can have as a benefit of being in the guild. So essentially what that allows is guilds can either be more focused into kind of elite teams that are smaller, that have specific objectives during these large encounters like castle sieges and whatnot, or they can be more on the higher member count side. And essentially
Zerg
at a
versus
certain
Protoss.
stage, right, exactly. And at a certain
Zerg
stage
versus
of that guild's
Protoss.
advancement, there comes an opportunity for the guild to elect to own a guild hall freehold. So essentially what that does is it grants the guild leader the additional opportunity to follow a quest line for a guild freehold plot that he would be the owner of, but the guild has access to and can contribute towards. And that allows them to build a guild hall out in the freehold system. Also, there's static in-node guild halls as well, which come with different benefits and opportunities.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's one of the things that I know that McConnell and I talked about is like how large could these things be, and so you'd be able to pretty much destroy them and you can destroy guild freeholds too. You can assault guild freeholds.
Right. So the way that destruction works is as 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 nodes advance, there are quest systems that are relating to achieving a siege scroll, essentially. Mm-hmm. And players can undertake that quest. They can acquire the siege scroll, and they can then lay the siege scroll down to declare a siege against a specific node. And depending on the stage of the node will determine the quest line required and the additional resources needed to reflect kind of not only the amount of effort it took to build that node, but that should be somewhat equitable to the amount of effort it takes to siege that node, right? So once the siege has been declared, a server message goes out that tells the server, hey, in X days' time, there will be a siege at this time. And all of the all of the allianced nodes with that node become automatically registered defenders for the siege. And they will be flagged as defending the combatants against the attackers. And any player who's not affiliated with an allied node of that node can come and register to attack against that node. And what happens is during a 2-hour period of time, there's a central objective that players must participate in. The defenders must run the clock out or destroy the headquarters of the attackers, and the attackers must gain access to the city, kill the quartermasters, which increases the respawn time of the defenders and decreases the respawn time of the attackers. And then they must reach a center point where they cast a 5-minute cast that's channeled and can't be interrupted by CC, but can be interrupted through death on a central flag that exists in the node. If the attackers are successful, what happens is the raw goods and the processed materials that are stationed within that regional warehouse that players are using become lootable. A portion of it is sunk, and then a portion becomes lootable to the attackers. In addition,
so you can steal stuff.
You can steal raw gatherables and processed goods, correct. You can't steal completed items or potions or equipment. But
why is that guy naked?
But the more important incentive is that as over a guild's lifespan, over a node's lifespan, they have what's called a reliquary. And the reliquary is a building within the node that houses all of the accomplishments, the achievements, the unique and legendary items that the node has achieved that the citizens have access to for different crafting things. And it destroys the reliquary, and access to limited use of those reliquaries are granted to the attackers as well. Now, if the siege is successful, the buildings inside are destroyed, including static and node housing and the apartment buildings. It's not going to be tedious for the players to essentially go and find a new node, and they can save their furniture layout, and they'll get their furniture mailed back to them, so they're not going to lose that component. We don't want to make it too tedious to kind of get back up and running again, because change should be a common theme in Ashes through the destruction and siege mechanics.
Yes.
But on the freehold side, after the siege is completed and the attackers have won, there's a 2-hour window where the marauders,
if you're not akin to change, then
out into the open world where the zone of interest
get ready, you will be.
Was relevant and can attack the freehold systems. Now, players will have the ability to defend their freehold, and if they survive that 2-hour window of destructibility, they will have a grace period where they can wait and see if another node pops up that they can exist under. And if they do successfully get another node risen in that grace period, then they'll fall under the tax purview of that node.
Okay, so you either get all your shit destroyed or you have to pay him.
Jesus.
That's pretty much how it works. Okay, so it's like basically like like a real life, the old Marauders raiding, like different cities, right? After they destroy the
Dang.
capital, they go and they attack the outrider,
Correct.
which is okay.
Correct. And one of the
yeah.
big things, one of the big targets for players will be during that time is housing. One of the biggest benefits of housing is that it offers you a separate depository, separate warehouse system where you can deploy chests in the housing, right? And the freehold systems have superior type chests that can be granted. They also store the processing raw materials takes time within the processing plants, those buildings that you construct on the freehold. So during the declaration of a siege, that declaration period that might last 3 to 5 days, depending on the size of the node, the ability to remove raw goods and gatherables or materials from the storage containers is suspended. You can't do it until after the siege.
Yeah.
So if there's some like legendary, there's a guild hall out there with a shit ton of materials and goods that that guild has, and you want to surprise them with that declaration, and you succeed, your next target is to go destroy that guild hall so you can then also loot their chests.
And this is the size of this goes up.
You
to
can't just pull out if you want to.
Side?
So that's
you gotta
castle
wait.
Sieges.
Okay.
Castle sieges. There are 5 unique castles that exist in the world. One per region, one per economic region, and they exert control and taxation rights over the nodes that live under their region. And they also have unique benefits from a crafting and from a crop rotation standpoint, as well as unique items and equipment and abilities that are granted to the host guild that owns it. Essentially what happens there is guilds go to register to attack those castles, and it's a 250 versus 250 player encounter. Now, that's really easy to accomplish. We have a great veteran team of developers, many of whom came from PlanetSide 1 and 2. And as you'll know, PlanetSide 2 hosts the largest current online battle of over 1,000 players in a single area, and we have the lead programmers from those games. So we feel very confident in the custom backend that we've been building under Unreal Engine 4 that we'll be able to facilitate that. Part of the the whole debacle, and we got a lot of shit for it with APOC, was to essentially test these systems. And luckily, during that testing period, we did discover that there were some architectural issues with the things that we were developing. If we had waited until later in the testing cycle, after systems have been built on top of those foundational architectures, it would have been a whole different beast to fix. So luckily, we discovered it early through that testing method, and we were able to fix it. And we have been demonstrating thousands of NPCs in a single zone, along with hundreds of players in our recent Alpha 1 preview testing.
So you're confident in having 500 players in combat,
Bye, Blizzard. Bye.
being able to do a castle siege with minimal lag.
Come on, people.
I will tell you this: we are extremely.
But Blizzard should worry about this game. They should.
Right now, we're trying to push it to 500 versus 500, but I can't give any promises we'd be able to achieve that.
500 versus 500, nice.
We're very confident on that. There's some very specific culling algorithms that we have applied to essentially not only from the client side.
That's so sick.
Spell
deal with the rendering issues. Yeah, there's scalability on spell effects. There's default player appearances to help rendering on the client side, but more importantly on the networking side, determining net relevancy and hosting specific players across distributed services on the server side is a new type of architecture that we're employing for Ashes of Creation, which will help facilitate those larger battles.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The castle sieges, especially from somebody like I love seeing those gigantic battles, like the PlanetSide ones, the online battles, and just seeing something like that. That's what really kind of inspires me to play the game. And so with WoW, they've had a lot of problems with that, and I'm really glad to hear that, because that's one thing that really makes an MMO, the first M massive. you have a lot of people in the same place.
Yeah, I mean that's one of our core tenets, right? Is kind of putting that massive back and massively multiplayer. Some of the most fun that I've had in the past, even though it was a slideshow shitfest for a lot of games, and it's no
Yep.
fault of the developers, it's just technology hadn't caught up by that time, right?
2 years is optimistic.
Is those
I'd
massive
say a
battles are a
few.
lot of fun.
And
Fucking-
yeah, sure they
I
do,
think-
but
You're in this brawl where you don't know what the fuck is happening, and you're,
I don't know.
having fun.
That's
trying
not as
to
much time as you
coordinate,
think.
The strategy for hundreds of players all at the same time. As
They definitely,
leader
I think, Blizz. I think the one thing Blizzard has that keeps it really going is the classic era. We just got BCC, and in a couple of years, we'll probably have Wrath, and that's a big expansion for a lot of people, myself included. I never played it, but I've just heard so much about it, so I'll probably be playing it. So, do I think WoW's going to die? No, I don't think so. But they're definitely there's something they should be a little concerned, and this isn't the only game either. Like Final Fantasy 14 is doing pretty well, it seems now, but this game definitely is going to pull a lot of people away. And that's okay. Like I stopped playing WoW in February, and I didn't start again until May. I took a few months off, and that's pretty normal. So it is what it is, right?
that your group's doing the right thing. Those types of things are what make those experiences memorable.
Oh, I still remember shit like that happened to me 10 years ago. And so I can totally understand that. And speaking of scale, like, what would be, I guess this is kind of like an odd question, what would we expect to see in terms of, like, large-scale monsters? Like, are there going to be Krakens in the sea? I like sea monsters, right? So I've got to ask about this.
So another core tenet when it comes to the immersion of the world is that this is a grand lore game. And by grand, I mean that there were monolithic and megalithic civilizations that existed. The dungeons are tall and wide and expansive. I mean, we released a 4K video last month of about 2 hours of uninterrupted, unedited gameplay.
Yeah, I've seen
and
that.
at the end of that video, you can see some of the dungeons that we're going through, and one of the lower bosses that is a pyroclastic dragon, essentially.
Yeah.
And they're massive.
Blizzard doing a better job than the
is,
game itself, and killing itself more.
Treant
Yep.
Dude, and
I have
you're
to
like
agree.
the size of his toe.
Well said. A
Oh,
lot of people feel
jeez.
that.
I
Okay,
mean,
so-
it's a lot of.
The size of his toe.
What kind of seafaring content? I saw that there's going to be there's a profession for shipbuilding. So,
But
what are
in
the
in that
objectives
respect,
you
they're
set on
classic
ship?
games. Will
So
probably keep
ships
them
are
alive for a while.
similar to caravans
Classic
in the
WoW.
sense
You know,
that
we'll keep
there
WoW
are
alive.
components that can be built through the shipbuilding
But yeah.
profession that enhance either
Blizzard's
the
got
durability of the vessel,
a lot
the
to learn
caravan,
and work on,
the
improve.
ability to move and change direction.
Lucky for them, WoW isn't their only
the
game.
speed that
Luckily,
it has, the hit points that it has, the offensive ability.
because if it was, I'd
That's
be
really the
concerned
shipbuilding
for
component. On the naval
for
front,
them.
the idea
If I was
there
them, I
is
would
that,
be.
you will have the ability to acquire different types of blueprints for ship construction. Those class of vessels will exist from a personal vessel to a group vessel to a.
I want to be a pirate.
To large, like,
I want my own
ship.
ship to sail the
And there's a lot of
seas.
content out on the ocean, not just from a raid boss standpoint, like large monsters like Kraken related or more Lovecraftian type.
Yeah, like a
depths of
giant
the sea
squid
stuff.
or yeah.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. And there will be required some significant coordinated efforts among multiple raids to down some of those raid bosses, but also there's going to be underwater dungeons and underwater kind of mounts that players can have as well. So you're going to be able to acquire these different ships that are going to be relevant to different experiences and different encounters.
Well, that's certainly that sounds fucking awesome. I'm just gonna say it sounds fucking awesome. Are there going to be islands out there in the sea that you can go and like
Yes.
kind of? Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So not only are there islands that exist out in the sea that have either dungeon content or you can place freeholds on if it falls into the purview of a coastal node, but also nodes that exist along the coast. Will change the spawn tables of the content out in the water as well, and those can attract specific events to that node. So the node will hook up.
The
to
nodes
a
are
interest that
definitely
exists in
a
each harbor, and that harbor will have
huge
specific quest
huge
lines
part of
laid
this
out
game.
to the out
If
on
not
ocean,
arguably the
islands
biggest
that
part.
exist out there.
Especially that
Okay,
makes
so
it
it's
stand
like,
out.
For example, if you have like an oil rig, and then the oil rig pollutes the water, and then like the animals out there turn like more corrupted and more powerful, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
I mean, not so much the
Yeah, not so much the pollution, but something similar.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Corruption is the primary theme within the world. You know, the lore
Mhm.
behind
Oh,
Ashes
right.
is
They've
that,
shown us the corruption
you're
areas.
essentially coming
I'd
back
like them to
to
look
a
visually a
planet
bit
that was the
more
home of your
corrupted, though.
ancestors, and they were driven out during the apocalypse by essentially the primary antagonists, the ancients and the others that exist, these evil gods and the initial creation of the gods. They come to kind of defile and pervert all of creation, and they drive your ancestors off this planet to a planet through the divine gateways called Sanctus. And then after thousands of years, the portals open up again,
And
you're
that's where
called
the
back
races come from, is the different
exactly
portals. Yes.
right.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you buy, like, is gear soulbound in the way that, like, once a character obtains it or equips it, they can't trade it to other people? Or could you hypothetically buy a best in slot helmet or sword?
So the vast majority of gear that exists within the economy of Ashes of Creation is not soulbound, and the reason for that is because the crafting mechanics as well as the decay mechanics that exist require not only the
Decay mechanic.
destruction of gear but also the constant resupply of base mats in order to repair that decay. It's not going to be some bullshit small gold compensation that makes a really irrelevant decay system. It's actually going to reinvigorate the demand and supply of base materials for the gathering artisanship tree. And with that being the case, we want there to be this open economy that utilizes this
So I'm
regional
going to need more
transit
leather to
system
fix
and
my
warehouses
leather
in order to
chest
supply
armor.
certain areas with the
Not just
ability
go
to
and just
craft
repair with gold.
and
Pay
create
somebody to do it.
weapons.
So, for example, if you have an iron sword and then the sword gets damaged from use, you have to use more iron to repair it?
Correct. And what that does is, remember the interdependencies that we were talking about on
Yeah.
the crafting system. You want to make
I
sure
like
that
that.
there's
That's
significant
it's pretty
sinks
interesting.
in the game for base mats and materials so
Create
that
demand.
you are creating a scarcity and demand that's present on the creation of higher goods as well as supplying the necessary decay components for the world.
Okay, and so somebody that basically wants to play the game as a crafter or a gatherer can pretty much do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. So,
Yeah.
my philosophy when it comes to MMOs, the MMOs, I played a lot of MMOs, and they all, in some way, shape, or form, have their own take on certain systems, right? The best systems that I've encountered are the games that incorporate these progression paths that are relevant for different kinds of players. Not everybody is a PvPer, not everybody is a PvEer, not everybody is a crafter. But if you can create a system like Ashes of Creation, where there are interdependencies between those different groupings, those different demographics of players, you can harmonize the population that feed off of each other, that are essentially are dependent
Creating an ecosystem.
core. Absolutely right. And the best MMOs I've experienced are the ones that go for that PvX experience. Those are the best MMOs that I've experienced.
PvX.
But that means that not everybody can be a winner. That there has to be a significant chase. There has to be people who are the masters of their craft, or the best ranking on the PvP side, have the legendary gear that means something. That it just can't be this type of super just
Like
meaningless experience.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, let's say, like, just in a hypothetical, I don't know if you've really, like, thought of it this much in terms of end game, but let's say you have a player that's just reached level 50, and then you have another player who has effectively, like, almost or the best gear in the game. What would you say is the power difference between those two players?
That's a very good question.
Very good question.
This is obviously a dilemma that a lot of games have to deal with. What I would say is the way we're building Ashes of Creation is there are two primary components. There are three primary components when it comes to an encounter like that. First, from a balancing perspective, our balance is dealing with specifically group-based balance. We are not balancing off of 1v1s. We're balancing off of an 8-player group, synergizing between the different effects that are housed within different active skills based on the archetype that you've chosen, right? So that's the first component. The second, and that provides a rock paper scissors type dynamic that's intrinsic in the Trinity type system. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel on the Trinity side. We feel that's a very competent type system, and it's relevant to different classes. So with that being the first component, the second one is that there should be something said for gear acquisition. Yes, there is going to be a discrepancy between the gear level of a hardcore player versus a casual player. And that's okay, because there should be certain progression paths that reflect a benefit for more time spent in investing in that progression path.
Yep.
So with that being said, not only are you going to acquire additional skill because you're more hands-on and tactile with the combat system because you're playing more often, but you're also going to acquire different gear levels. And that gear level can present, if I were to give just an off-the-hand percentage difference, I would say that we want gear to influence maybe at a max of like 40 to 50% of an overhead benefit. Now, the third component, however, and that's the most extreme discrepancies, right?
Okay.
The third component is going to be level and skill, right? Excuse me, level applies to the second component. The third one's going to be skill. The skill is going to be important because the way that the skills are essentially established is there's a lot of synergy effects that can occur based off status conditions that are applied. So, for example, just to give you an idea of the way the skill system works, there's 3 primary skill sections. There's passives, there's actives, and then there's combat skills. Combat reflect specifically your weapon skills. So if you're a dagger, if you're a rogue and you're using a dagger, and your dagger, you want to invest some skill points into that weapon group, you can start unlocking, proc effects that cause the target to bleed, that can cripple the target or hamstring the target. And the way your active skills interact with that is, let's say we don't have an auto attack feature, by the way. A weapon attack is an active combat attack. So
no
you
auto
have to
attack.
actively
Okay.
press that weapon attack to use it. And when you do make contact with the target, if you've invested skill points into that weapon, you can
So you gotta pay
essentially cause the
attention.
bleed to proc. If the bleed procs on the target, you're going to have a corresponding skill, like let's say backstab, that you can apply to deal X damage to the target, and it'll have a conditional modifier on that damage if you're behind the target, and it'll have a conditional modifier deal additional 50% damage if the target is under a bleed effect. So you want to synergize essentially your weapon proc conditions.
So gear is not everything. It's a big part. It matters, but there's also big components as well.
So with that, to
Okay.
answer your question long-windedly, apologize. Essentially,
It depends on how they balance it, right?
The skill level.
We gotta wait and see. I mean,
investment
it's
that
been a
you
year,
put into it,
almost a year
the
since
gear,
this time, anyway.
discrepancy
So
between you and the target, but also the
stuff could have
the
changed.
skill
But the idea, I like the idea.
to combat the character.
The amount of skills
The
that you
vision,
get,
I would say.
so you level up to 50. Is there any leveling system beyond 50? Are the skills the leveling system beyond 50, or how does that work? And are they finite or infinite?
So they are finite.
That's good.
We intend to have a lot of additional content creation for the game post-launch that will manifest both on a monthly, and a quarterly basis to kind of implement new features into the game and whatnot. Because a lot of the features that we actually have discussed, those are going to be present at launch, but we also have features that have been backlogged into post-launch feature sets. But with that being said, on the progression level, yes, you progress to 50, but the way that our skill system works is you choose one of the base 8 archetypes initially, and then you choose from that base archetype again at level 25. And the secondary archetype does not grant you additional skills, but it does give you access to what are called schools of augmentation. And there are 4 schools of augmentation per secondary archetype. So let's say you choose fighter initially as your.
I definitely like the primary and secondary. I like that a lot.
Your skill points into, and that'll get
A
you
lot of
like, say, a rush
customization.
ability. And the rush ability will allow you to charge X distance to a target. Upon reaching the target, deal X damage and some condition modifier, and that's the rush skill. If you take the secondary archetype of mage, that'll give you access to 4 different augmentation schools. One of which may be teleportation. The teleportation augmentation you can spec into, and when applied to the rush skill, will now, instead of charging the target over X distance, over X time, will instantly teleport you to the target. So upon reaching the target, you'll deal X damage to some condition modifier. If you had chosen the elemental school, you'll charge X distance to the target. Upon reaching the target, you might set the target ablaze or deal electrical damage that deals damage over time. So the idea is to house the active skills in the primary archetype, but change the skill
Augment, modify them.
Secondary school, which kind of blurs the line between what role you take in the Holy Trinity.
Okay, so there's like going to be things like, for example, I saw that you had bards, and bards don't really do damage, they don't really heal, but they kind of do a bit of both and empower other people. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Want to
Right,
become
bards are very
famous?
strong
I
with
do
close.
not, but
So
thanks.
bards are essentially going to be proximity-based buffs that become relevant and are timed according to essentially when the bard chooses to activate certain skills. These are going to augment the tanking ability, the evasions ability, the DPS, the healing abilities. You know, they're gonna be essentially a whole array of buffs that are conditional and situational and based on proximity to your party member.
Okay, well that's definitely good to hear. And
You okay? So what you're saying is you don't think it's going to be balanced? Yeah, it's a lot of complexity. Wow, bots for buying views. Yeah, yeah, they appear at times. Let's see. Let's say bye bye. Okay, there goes bye bye to that guy. I mean, it's not like it would come back anyways, but yeah, I agree, Jably. It's going to be very difficult to balance all of that. That's a lot of complexity. That's kind of one of my reservations about the game is, Steven has this incredible vision, and sometimes companies reach a little too high. You get too close to the sun, right? So, look, this is a year ago, right? Things can change. A year from now, things can change. A month from now, things can change. So, I think the ideas are great. The implementation, we have to just wait and see. That's why, you know, I recommend people don't overhype games, right? It's okay to be excited. I'm excited about it, but this is a difficult thing to do. It's a difficult thing.
is there going to be a class that's basically like a retribution paladin, like a Templar or a Crusader or something like that?
Yeah, we have a Templar. The
You're
idea
right. This
kind of
is this is
behind
definitely
again
not
these
a
augments is
game
that
for solo players. It's
you may
not.
be proficient
He
in
doesn't
damage
want it to be. He
mitigation
said it.
game,
They're
right?
going to be balancing based on group play. So, and that's okay. The game doesn't have to cater to everybody. So it is what it is. And that's why I say like games like WoW and other ones, Final Fantasy 14, they're still going to be around probably, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong. More games, people can play what they like. So yeah, I agree.
For controlling the battlefield and drawing aggro. And as you choose a secondary class like the healing class, you may be able to augment your your AOE aggro power to also convert incoming damage into health for your character, or to grant a temporary shield to damage mitigate and take the damage from a nearby ally if you target them. These are the types of kind of augments that become available when the class systems are combined.
Okay, so they're kind of, you have like your main class and then kind of like a subclass which modifies your main class abilities effectively?
Right. Through
Okay.
the augment system, yeah.
And so flying mounts apparently are extremely exclusive. There's only going to be 10 people with them on a server. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Hey, my phone is dying, so actually let me transfer you over to the car and hopefully it doesn't.
Okay.
How does this work?
It works. Yes, it works. You're good.
Okay. Sorry, if you want to run to the restroom.
Okay, all right. I'll be right back. Okay, give me a second.
Okay. I heard another voice on. Who else is on here?
War games is a win for gamers. Thank you. Well said.
Me, man. I'm just here to hang out.
Oh, okay, nice.
15 years, man.
Oh.
Oh yeah, I love WoW. I've been playing WoW for like 15 years, man.
Oh, folks, that's a while.
Yeah, it's too long. This game sucks.
Classic server?
Classic is a Classic's it's a game we sometimes play.
Yeah, I missed out on the WoW mode. I was really heavily into Lineage at the time, but
honestly, man, you probably didn't miss much.
One thing I really appreciated about WoW was the rating system. I thought that WoW did that super well.
Rating?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, their raid systems, or their raid's been pretty good. I like their, the art team in WoW's been doing, like, pretty
Yeah, the art
good
team.
for,
The
like,
art team is
10
good.
years, I would say. Right,
Yeah.
chat?
Oh yeah, there's such talented developers over at Blizzard, 100%.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. You there?
Welcome back, yeah.
Okay, so I was wondering about flying mounts. Like, are they really going to be as uncommon as people make them out to be?
Yeah. So
And imagine how
you
epic
know,
getting a flying
one of
mount
the
is.
things that
And
that
so few
goes
people
back
have
to
it.
kind of that philosophy of earning legendary shit that is unique and is scarce. Um, that's not just going to be with regards to like flying mounts. It's also going to be in regards to unique items that exist on the server where only one can exist at a time. But also, on the flying side, we have different tiers of mounts essentially, and the royal tier can only be accessed on a time basis for guild leaders who own a castle and mayors who are mayors of Metropolis stage, which is the last stage of no development.
Okay.
But additionally, players can also have an opportunity as a rare drop to get eggs from legendary bosses. And then that egg system has a quest path that relates to the processing profession of husband, where you can essentially raise that pet, that
I do.
mount
I like that too.
to have a lifespan that ranges from 15 to 30 days based on how well you raise the mount. And then once you open the mount and use it for the first time, its lifetime starts ticking. So if you ever lose the castle or don't become or aren't mayor one season or your mount dies, you lose access to that. So at any given time on a server, there's only ever going to be between, let's say, 10 and 20 people that will have access to flying mount. And
Wow.
Wow.
the castle siege mounts,
I don't. I don't. I don't remember that. I don't remember hearing about that. That there's lifespans.
mounts
Hmm.
and the node Metropolis mounts, those are huge mounts. So these are very large dragons that have significant battlefield abilities like laying down massive AOE's
So this is
or laying down
like
buffs.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, you see Danny flying in and
Yeah.
just burning the shit out of King's Landing, and that's what's happening.
Okay, well, fuck yeah, that sounds awesome. So, do the normal mounts also have lifespans, or is it just the flying mounts?
No, just the royal mounts. So
All
only
right.
royal mounts have lifespans. All other mounts, they can be mounts can be separately.
Only for eggs. Okay.
They can also follow you, so you can be dismounted and they can be summoned. And essentially, they can be targeted and killed. If they're killed, there's a cooldown time before they can be rewritten. And there's also going to be certain types of potions that can restore life on a mount that's been killed, so you don't have to wait the cooldown time.
Can you re-ride the royal mounts too, or when they die, are they just permanently dead?
No, you can rewrite them as well,
Okay.
so long as you have the satisfying condition, and that condition's either being, the mayor, the guild leader, or
And those dragons.
available.
Can other people ride on the mount with you, or are they all just one person mounts?
So, in the guild system, there is going to be essentially royal mounts that are temporary only during guild sieges. Now, these won't, and you can assign them to officers. So you're going to have a limited selection that you can apply towards certain officers. They'll have the ability to fly those mounts as well. They're not going to be as large, and they won't have the same type of presence and abilities that the main mount has during the castle siege for the guild leader, but they are going to provide flying ability so you can have oversight.
Wow.
Nazgul.
Nazgul. Yes.
Like that, basically?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, like a Nazgul, yeah. Like they're going to be...
Nazgul.
they won't be the Witch King of Akhamar, but they will be like the little lesser...
Yeah, the Witch King is the guy with the royal mount, is that right?
Exactly.
Okay, alright, that makes sense. So, is there any way, so you have like the auction house, is there going to be any way to like buy currency in the game, or is it going to be completely built inside of, farming gold? So like I know in RuneScape, for example, you can effectively buy gold with like bonds, and in WoW you can buy gold with the WoW token, and there are other things in the game that are effectively like kind of pay-to-win features. Are you guys going to have anything like that? Absolutely not?
No.
Absolutely not.
No. Okay, that's great.
So that I played is when the company comes in and you have a player-driven economy, and they think it's a great idea to throw something, a wrench into that economy, and introduce something on a microtransaction market that upends the player driven economy that people spend money. When you think about the way that the economy in Ashes of Creation works, essentially it's a traditional gold-based system. However, monsters don't drop gold per se. What they drop are certificates. And these certificates can be pelts. They can, just a term we use. They can be pelts. They can be whatever that house the value of the monster's death. Okay, and you accrue these over time. And what happens is you go to a certain node, and based on the level of the node and the distance of that node from the location of the drop, will determine the value of the certificate. So, like I said, there's 5 primary economic regions. And in that scenario, there's 5 specific certificate types that are granted by the mobs that die in those regions. You can move those certificates through the caravan system. But if you get attacked and the caravan is destroyed, a portion of those certificates gets sunk, and then another portion are granted through the wreckage that the caravan now supplies the attackers. So you have to be strategic. You can turn it in within the region you farm them.
The first election of Drython will commence in 10
But
minutes.
if you want to take the risk, you want to take some of those certificates across regions, you can do it through the caravan system, and it provides a significant sync but opportunity to the player. Again, that's an opt-in type system.
So, like, for example, if you're out in like a winter area in like a northern mountain and you kill a Yeti and then you take it all the way down to some southern area, it's probably worth a lot more money.
Exactly, it could be worth upward or 5 times what you would normally get for trading it into a huntsman at a local node where you farmed it.
Okay, and that's kind of about, and you're balancing that basically with the idea that it's going to take players a while to go from point A to point B.
So there's 2 primary algorithms that are used when balancing the return ratio on those certificates.
Okay.
Sorry, don't mind my Tyranitar. I just got him yesterday. He's adorable. I love his face.
So we have
His
a
face.
tally of how many certificates are out there. Then we also have a
Look at that face.
heat period that takes into account. Boy, that doesn't sound good. A heat period. We also
Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. Sit here with me, buddy.
we also have a period of time.
He's a Pokemon.
Take into account the
I like
number of
Pokemon.
trade-ins of specific types of those pelts within, let's say, a week or a month's period of time.
Yeah.
And that also is a determining factor in the return that you can get from the huntsman.
So you have it's like an internal like supply demand or price demand algorithm?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
that's part of our what we call our world manager, and the world manager takes into account a lot of different. It takes into account, the amount of experience that's being gained by players as a heat map on the world, so that we know what type of threshold states can be applied to different node advancement.
Run.
We also take into account the transit of resources
They're bugged.
and goods
Run.
from region to region, so that there can be specific quests that provide those types of rewards based off of how much has been turned in. So for example, part of what nodes can utilize to develop their treasury, which they then spend on the development of buildings or defenses, is essentially incentivizing players, raw iron, raw mithril, in that, and then they get a reward, and that reward is based on the algorithm of how much has been turned in elsewhere to kind of drive those quest systems.
Okay.
Additionally, there's a lot of stuff that goes into the world manager system.
Okay. So
And can I just say, like, so many of the people in Asmongold's chats, like, man, toxic as hell.
so that's all kind of like basically a throttling system.
He,
So
he
things
just
don't
tunes
get
it
too
out.
far out of
Oh,
hand in any
he just
sort of
tunes it
way.
out.
Right, not only
Yeah.
throttle, but it's also an incentive system. So, like, for example, if iron is being used as a raw resource for specific.
Did I get an alpha phase? No, I did not.
that might drop-
Alpha is not my cup of tea. I've only done early access with a couple of games, and generally speaking, it's it's not for everybody. Betas. I'm fine with betas. I'll probably do beta for this game, most definitely. I don't know if it's gonna be a beta 1 or 2. I haven't decided yet. Kind of just depends on one. You like to find bugs, but that's cool. Hey, you know what? That's great because we need people like you, right? We need people like you who like to find those things, who like to break things. My son is absolutely mesmerized by glitches and bugs, right? I'm talking about like games released and whatnot. He loves that. He loves games where there's glitches and bugs that you can take advantage of. So that's great. I'm glad to hear that that's your cup of tea, because we need people like that to find these things and give feedback. I'm just you know, I've said this before on my channel. It just really comes down to my time's limited, and so if I'm going to spend my time, I'd rather be just playing like a polished or close to that game, right? So that's really it.
Drive up the price of mithril or silver, right? And that will incentivize the market course correct a little bit. The idea is.
I think if I was younger, maybe it would be a little different. I had more time.
Help to
it's not my thing.
the demand and also to prop up the supply that might not be present from the economic systems.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense.
I hear you. I hear you. It's not. It's what I meant by younger is that I had more time when I was younger. That's what I meant.
There's not going to be
not the actual age. I'm not that old yet.
Real money trading.
We're not. Neither of us are that old yet.
There won't be allowed RMTs, I guess. Real money trading.
We'll get there.
Right? But you can trade the currency within the game for purchasing items or whatnot.
Okay.
We do have already built into the game, on the outset, is essentially behavioral metrics.
So are you doing alpha?
In the game, as a player does normal things and they acquire normal gold, that's all good and well. But if there starts to be item IDs that appear on the player account that are out of the norm, like either a large amount of gold or significant legendary items,
like
what
thresholds.
That does in the back, exactly what it does in the back, it flags the account.
Got a son who's going to be senior and a 5-year-old.
Where did this item come from?
So
from a known gold
I got a ways to
or
go.
You're
an alpha, nice. You know what?
Pretty hard on.
Do you stream too? Are you going to be streaming when you play? If you don't mind me asking.
The ability for players to
like on Twitch here or on YouTube
by RMT or botting.
Okay.
Also,
well,
another important fact is that
you don't know yet. Okay.
Decade, what I've noticed in a lot of
well, if you do, let me know. I'll follow you just so I can see a little bit of that.
Serious influx of gold sellers, otters, and whatnot, and this is super problematic.
If you're fine with that, of course.
There's no barrier of entry for those types of bad actors.
No pressure. I was just asking.
When you have a subscription-based model, what you do is you exchange the.
They probably are.
Gold sellers. Now, there's still going to be gold sellers. We're going to have to combat that. And that's part of the behavioral metric system. But being a subscription-based game alone automatically.
But that's great that you can come and share some of your thoughts and your feedback after playing.
Yeah, because they have to pay money, and then also because it takes so long to level, and the odds are you're probably going to be able to make a lot more gold whenever you're high level. The investment is much higher, and so if you're banning them at a higher rate than they're getting their return on investment, then they're not going to be. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's what
and then one other thing that's super important is, in my experience as an MMO player, I really hate the fact that not a lot of companies invest in active GM teams, GMs who are present on the server, day-to-day basis, and are playing the population, and are there to actively enforce and moderate what can be amazing.
They used to
from these gold sellers.
Not anymore.
So one of the pledges, in Ashes of Creation, and something that
you did.
Personal interest of mine is making sure that
nice.
the player base
I might need to do that too. I need to do a little research, see who else is. Who else is doing content for this game? Because I should probably do the same.
Question I wanted to ask is that what are stats on gear going to look like? Like what kind of stats?
So,
yeah.
Because gear is not class dependent, you can have any type of gear you want, and gear is really the type of gear you want to have is based on the encounter you're facing. So, if you're going to be a tank, there's different types of tanks you can be. Sure, from a balancing standpoint, no game has ever achieved ultimate balance. There's always metas, and there's going to be, updates that try to address certain metas, but we don't want to destabilize the builds that people have built, so we have to be really cognizant of that. But what I would say is that, when you acquire gear is going to have multiple types of stat allocations that are dependent on the crafter to determine, and also there's going to be multiple types of sets that exist within the different tier levels of the gear that you can acquire from drops from monsters or raid bosses or dungeons or quest lines all of which have different types of relevancy to whatever your focus is. If you're a physical combat damage type focus, there's going to be stats that augment your strength and that affect your ability and the option to crit. Those types of going to be things that you'll have to make conscious decisions.
Great community is that's a rarity. That's a great thing to hear.
The usual strength, agility.
That's a really nice thing to hear. I'm glad to hear that.
Probably hit chance and stuff like that.
Right. Yep.
There'll always be toxic players, but that's still that's very good to hear.
Yeah. So essentially, players have the ability to augment their skills with certain types of damage or energy types, and in addition, you will have the ability to enchant and empower your equipment as well. And you can empower and enchant them as a give and take type relationship, where you may want to spec into a more specific fire type damage or radiant damage, and then players will have the option to enchant their armor as resistant against certain types. And what that does is add
someone said literally lineage 2
of complexity and item custom class customization, so that there's no just cookie cutter.
Must be similar. It seems like he loved lineage 2.
All the different players that exist out there, each person is going to have a very unique build in that regard, and you're going to want to make sure you know who players on the battlefield are when you're going up against them, or that you're synergizing with them if you form parties for PvE.
Okay, that makes sense. So, like, if you know you're going up against a node that's right next to a volcano, you can probably get gear with fire resistance on and do better than average.
Exactly. And those socketed enchantments can be exchanged out for.
I agree. I agree.
Well, that makes sense. And also,
the corruption system is a great way to put that in check.
So,
but I'm also talking about there's toxicity outside of the physical playing of the game, right? Like forums and whatnot. WoW's is pretty bad from what I've seen. So yeah, I hear you though. But I like that a lot though. I like the corruption. I like that. I'm on a bounty hunt. I'm telling you. I'm going to do it.
So on foot, that would take multiple
Ignore forums. Yeah, I know. I don't really go on them that much.
The world size is,
I hear about them in videos.
To put that into kind of context, I guess. What was the name of that game? Well, if you take a look at Lineage as a world, I believe Lineage was about 400 square kilometers, and it was a significant trek across them. The idea behind our travel systems, though, is that as nodes develop, you can get faster travel, but fast travel is very difficult to attain. You'll have to see a metropolis of the scientific type, and then that can construct a building that offers player fast travel, teleportation, or airship travel to nodes that exist under its vast.
I'm on there. I'm on there. I'm Dominus 2424.
Under its zone of influence.
On there.
So you'll have fast travel under that scientific metropolis. But faster travel is things like commissioning a thunder bird to take you, not the car, but
I'm on there right now. Yeah.
An actual Thunderbird.
An actual Thunderbird fly you down to a node or a different region quickly.
So you'll have flight paths.
Exactly, correct. They'll be on a spline route and they'll take you across the world. The idea there, the reason why this is important to me, because a lot of that I played in the past, there is this Zerg mentality and mechanic where any given guild that's large instantly port to a location and just overwhelm the people. The no fast travel kind of, I think, curtails that a little bit. If you get wind of a man on the and your guild is like, oh man, we need to get there, and everybody's out in parts of the world, it should take some time to move to that location. You shouldn't just be able to instantly teleport your Zerg if you want to go and just overrun people. So that fast travel gator, it's kind of going to curtail that Zerg mentality.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know that happens in like classic WoW. It happens in WoW a lot. Will players be able to summon to other locations? Like, let's say,
Yeah, so there's going to be a friendship mechanic that exists within the family system that will. So there's a limited number of family members that you can have, and essentially
Okay.
you'll be able to, on cooldown, summon certain family members. So the idea is that this is a longer cast time, and that you can slowly start to spawn your family members. Now, you can only ever be a member of one family. So it's important, if you want to coordinate kind of constant party or PvE groups, that you
What happens if I want to break
coordinate which
ties?
families you're a part of, so that you can
I don't want it
summon
no
out to
more.
different dungeons and whatnot.
Okay, so there is a way, but it's very limited.
Correct.
Okay, well that makes sense. And a couple of questions is that when are we going to get the alpha? Yeah.
So
Now the hard questions.
We announced the Alpha 1 is the end of the. It's going to be, something right now that we're in the middle of actually testing. We have next month. We've invited about, I think there's a little over 450 people that are our backers to participate in the preview of the Alpha 1 client. And then as we kind of go through testing the server infrastructure as well as bugs and base systems for the Alpha 1 then we're going to start opening it up to about 10. We have about 10,000 people who are scheduled for Alpha. So the time frame for that is about the end of this year.
Wow, and 10,000 is about the size of one full server. Is that right?
Right. So our for a server between 8 to 10,000. Now in Alpha 1, we're going to be mitigating that server concurrency because the playable area is significantly smaller than what the whole world will be. So servers around 1,500 to 2,000 concurrency.
Yeah.
Because it's only about 20% of the world map that's playable.
And that's going to be happening at the end of the year.
Correct.
I'm in the PST.
And is the game isn't buy
Pacific
to play. You just pay a subscription and then you can play?
PCT, sorry, Pacific Coast. So it's about 2:30 p.m. for me.
That's really important.
How about you?
I don't like companies that try to nickel and dime players by having all.
EST, okay, you're Eastern Standard Time. Steven, come back to us. So yeah, I play in the evenings around like 8:30, so it'd be like 11:30 when I'm playing WoW then. So I'm not so sure you'd be interested in that. But if I do stuff like this, it's going to be during the day around this time.
So I highly advise people who are skeptical or think I don't know if it's going to be all it's hyped up to be.
That is funny.
Wait until the game launches. You'll be able to see. We're not going to have an NDA on Alpha. We're not going to have an NDA on Alpha 2. You'll be able to see people playing this game.
He said that again a year ago.
But
no NDA, I don't know. We'll see.
For me to the player base, I'm not going to charge a buy to play. There's not going to be a box price. It's going to be entirely just subscription based.
Well, that's certainly a relief. I know some games now they have you have to pay a subscription, you have to buy the game, sometimes buy expansions on top of that, and they have the microtransactions, and it's not much.
Yeah, my philosophy is if you build it, they will come, and a subscription is more than enough for a company that has a successful game under its belt to provide constant updates, content releases, and it really just creates a healthy dynamic between the player base and
we're so lucky.
Providing new experiences.
We are so lucky we have someone like Steven who money is not a factor and he can just look at it logically instead of trying to just maximize his profits. He's just like, this is enough for me to pay my GMs, to pay, my employees, and keep the game running. He's not greedy.
Expansion, whatever. All the DLC and the expansions will be part of the subscription price. So right now that's at $15.99 a month. That we're
You're not the first person who said that they should delay that.
It's really important to me, and I'm funding the project myself, and we don't have this the desire to be transparent is a double-edged sword. On one end, you have to trust the player base to look at things with a objective and understand that making an MMO is hard as fuck, and making an MMO of our size even harder. So we want players to be a part of that, because the good side of the sword is you guys get to give us feedback. You get to give us input. You get to get on our Discord server and chat with me and other developers and, tell us your experiences as an MMO player. What did you enjoy? What excites you? What are you liking about the experiences you've experienced in Ashes so far? That's all so meaningful to us as developers as we go through the iteration process from test period to test period, and we continue building this game. Are all the animations going to be perfect during alpha? No, of course not. Is all the content going to be there? No, of course not. Is there still going to be a shit ton of polish that's needed on the game? Absolutely. That 4K video we put out last month, even though it looked good, it's nowhere near what it's going to look like when the game is near the polish phase and it's going to be actually ready for launch. So, what I would advise, and I know you got a lot of viewership, and by the way, I really appreciate you taking the time, even though I'm in the car, coming on here and chatting.
Likewise.
The opportunity just to tell people, look, this is a process, but our ultimate end goal to make a product of quality that we are proud of,
Really fall not die there.
you are proud of, and that means not rushing to market, not launching early, taking our time and building the things that need to be built. If you guys like what you're hearing on the systems and mechanics side, you trust us, that's what's going to be built, and we're going to take the time necessary to make sure it's built right.
And that's I think something that's reassuring for a lot of people. I think that a lot of the
Check that, Amazon.
like emotionally based concerns that people have really stem out of not being listened to or feeling like they're not heard. So having a more direct
I agree.
the
Yeah,
community
there's
and
pros and
everything
cons
is
to that.
definitely
Yeah.
something that I see developers.
He's got a very
doing.
specific
And
vision.
when that happens, you might have people that
It
disagree
sounds
with what
good.
developers say,
There's
but
pros
they
and
always
cons to it.
respect that they're getting the communication.
Absolutely, that's 100% right. I mean, I
We'll
like
see,
now that I've seen more developers participate.
I think if they deliver what they said, it's going to be a success, regardless.
Me personally,
How good of a
past
success?
years of
We'll see.
production, 5 years since I've undertaken
We
the
will
intrepid
see.
endeavor, my life is Ashes of Creation. I live, eat, breathe, wake up, and don't get sleep over building this game like my fellow developers. We're doing it to make something that players that we love in this genre, that love the genre like us, have been asking for a long time. And having a company that respects the players and their input is not something that's seen very often.
No.
And it's important to show other publishers and companies and game developers that there is a right way to engage your audience and to know your such an not let design decisions get influenced by a board of suits. They're looking to make the bottom line creating something that respects what players want.
The suits.
And that
The
gives
suits.
longevity and retention that an MMORPG
The suits.
deserves.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. I feel like there's always been, especially now with these companies being public and making decisions for shareholders and not players. And I think this has happened a lot with mini games and many genres. I mean, you've seen it happen with Fallout. I think that was one. WoW's had its share of problems. And to have things that are kind of by players for players is something that, have you ever played Path of Exile?
Yeah,
look at the love that people have for that game.
Absolutely. That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you this. I know that there's a lot of skepticism out in the MMORPG community in a whole, not just about Ashes, but about any new development.
Yep.
And that's because we've been beaten time and time again with a stick, and we're like this hurt dog that is like somebody
on paper, but execution,
beef jerky,
balance,
biscuit, and they're like, here,
delivery. There's a lot between now and finished product. So
I understand that is.
We got some passionate people though on it. So
of the jadedness and skepticism, comes out. It's understandable.
Some of my reservation just comes from, can they actually deliver what they say? Like I don't know enough about development. I have siblings that are developers, so I know something about it. I tried computer science, believe it or not, and was not for me. But I don't know. Sometimes when they say we're going to try and implement this, I think, it's a little too hard for me to wrap my head around. So I just again have to trust them that they can deliver what they said, and if they can't, that they'll be transparent about it.
What I would say, there's nothing more motivating to a developer, especially on a project like Ashes, than to see the excitement from a community about the design philosophy and mechanics that we're instituting in the game, And if you have skepticism, just sit back and wait, watch, see what happens. You know, it doesn't shitting on people. It's not beneficial to making significant change in a genre we all love.
Yeah, I think that's one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of us, we just really want to play a good game. That's really what
Just want to
ultimately
play
matters.
a good game.
And I mean, like
Well
I've
said.
always been kind of critical about WoW, and it's really good to see what this game is shaping up into. And I think one thing that really I think I can speak for at least a lot of people in my audience that is reassuring is that it seems like a lot of the ideals and the philosophy that you guys are taking into the game is something that's
100% tax room.
shared by a lot of players and not as many developers. And I think that's probably one of the most refreshing things to hear.
Yep,
So
we do have a good base. We do.
We're excited.
Well, yeah, we are too, especially now more than ever. So thanks a lot for coming on and talking about all this. It really means a lot to us, and for our community, thank you very much. And we are very anxiously waiting to be able to play the alpha.
Thank you. Appreciate that, buddy. I'll hook you up with that alpha. I know you messaged me.
All right, man. All right,
And
thank you very much.
Thank you to your community. Thanks for the time, but appreciate it. Have a good day.
All right, talk
Thanks,
to you later,
man.
man. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Dude,
So what do you think? What do you think?
dude.
Yeah, what?
Listen,
This guy's about to lose it.
if
He's
this
about to...
game comes out
Yeah.
with everything that's been promised and it's polished, WoW's done.
I don't think WoW's gonna be done. I'm gonna be honest. Like, this game's never gonna die. Like, but it'll be a good game to play too. Like, I would love to have another game that we could play. So I'll be honest. I hope, guys, that I did a good job with the interview. Okay.
You did a great
I
job.
really
You
do.
did. He actually
Obviously,
did.
I tried to do my best, asking the questions that I thought were relevant. There were tons of things that you guys wanted to have me ask. I didn't have. What do you call it? I didn't have a ton of questions I took from you guys, but I do want to say thank you all very much for watching that, and also for being supportive. I did a great job. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I did. And No Man's Sky 2.0. Well, the difference between No Man's Sky and this is that we actually have a playtest for it, and also the other big difference between No Man's Sky and this is being self-funded, so there isn't pressure from
The suits.
publishers. There isn't
The
pressure
suits.
from Microsoft, for example, to push a product. So it's not really the same thing.
It's
now,
not.
obviously, I mean, there are games that could be, this game could be in development for the next 5 years. We don't really know.
Could be.
Hopefully that's not going to be the case. But if that's what it takes, then that's what
It'll be
matters.
ready when
This
it's
has
ready.
been something that we've been waiting to
No
hear
sooner.
for a long time. As MMO players,
Hey, thanks for coming, man. Thanks for the follow. I'll see you next time. I'm going to be joining you soon, so appreciate it. We'll see you next time. We're going to be covering the this Friday's live stream. I'm not going to be able to watch it live, unfortunately, on Friday because I have something else going on, but I'm going to be covering it next week, a week from today on Monday. So if you guys don't watch it live or you just want to come join me for whatever reason, then feel free to come join me then.
or at least I can speak for myself. I've wanted to hear what Steven had to say for a long time.
Have a good one.
It didn't really matter who
See you
was
soon.
saying it, but he was saying it. And this has been something that we've been looking forward to and wanting to see forever. I mean, I feel like we've been neglected. We've been...
Dude, his analogy about us being, like, MMO players being fucking
the
dogs
dogs.
that just getting the shit
Yeah,
beat out of
fucking-
us, like, that dude.
Come here, here's Aeon. Here's Aeon. Boom. Fuck you.
That was so spot on. It
Yeah.
actually hurt a little bit.
I know, it really did. It was kind of sad, wasn't it? Are you backing a Kickstarter? Yeah, I'll back the Kickstarter. I will. I absolutely will. I think that it's a good option, and I always talk about supporting things and that kind of stuff. And
Thanks so
I think
much,
that's the
Dibley.
best
Appreciate
idea
it. And I look forward to
to
hearing
lead by example.
some of your feedback after playing that alpha. I really do. So I'm really glad we found each other. Gamer dads or just gaming parents unite, right? Okay, guys. Well, that was a great stream. I'm really glad that a viewer of mine on YouTube recommended it. and kind of pressed me to come and take a look. And I'm glad I got to meet some great fellow gamers. And I'll be back soon. We'll be back soon next week. A week from today, I'll be covering the live stream from this Friday. I'm excited, to see where it goes. This is the one before the alpha one, so it's hopefully we get some great news and some interesting info. Yeah. If you have questions, feel free to ask. Been off from the start. Okay. Yeah, I definitely will. I'll hold you to that. So, all right. Well, I'm gonna join. Cannabis here, and I'm gonna go have some lunch and watch some anime. So I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day, great week. If I don't see you again, and we'll talk soon. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then please consider liking and subscribing, just because it really helps me out and motivates me to want to do content like this. So appreciate it. Have a good one. Bye bye.